All right, welcome to our latest explainer. Today we are setting the stage for a seriously dramatic journey through over 300 years of medieval Indian history. We're going to uncover the rise, the ruin, and the absolutely remarkable reforms of a massive, sprawling empire that quite literally shaped the subcontinent forever.
Make no mistake, this history we're diving into isn't just some dry list of dates you have to memorize. Not at all. It's a thrilling, cinematic epic. We're talking unyielding ambition, brutal betrayals, and monumental legacies left behind in stone and mortar. Just think about the sheer scale of this era. Over 3 centuries, power violently shifted hands across 5 distinct dynasties, and every single one of them, from the slaves all the way to the Lodis, left a permanent scar and an incredible structural footprint on the map of India.
So here is our roadmap for today. 1. The rise, dominance of the slave dynasty. 2. Khaljis, terror and market control. 3. Tughlaqs, genius and disastrous experiments. 4. Sayyids and Lodis, the final era. And finally, 5. The administrative engine of the Sultanate. Let's get into it.
Section 1. The rise, dominance of the slave dynasty, the foundations of the empire.
It all kicks off with Kutubuddin Aybak. Now he's famous for his architectural marvels, but his reign was actually cut short by a fatal polo accident. So the real founder, Iltutmish, steps up. He establishes the Ikta, or provincial land grant system, mint standard currency, and does all this while expertly dodging Mongol invasions. Then comes his groundbreaking daughter, Razia Sultan. As the very first female ruler, she completely defied tradition, leading troops without a veil, but tragically she fell to a noble rebellion. And finally, we get Balban. He ruled with a terrifying blood and iron policy, enforcing extreme submission rituals like physical prostration or sajda, just to remind everybody that he was quite literally God's shadow on earth.
Section 2. Khaljis, terror and market control, the imperial peak.
Moving into the Khalji era, we see a wild shift in leadership. On one side, you have the founder, Jalaluddin. He was 70 years old when he took the throne, and he's famous for his super-liberal approach. He famously said that 10 forts weren't worth a single hair of his soldiers. He even settled defeated Mongols right in Delhi. But then, on the exact opposite end of the spectrum, you have his nephew and son-in-law, Alauddin. Completely obsessed with world conquest, Alauddin brutally murdered Jalaluddin to seize the throne, kicking off a massive reign of terror and imperial expansion across places like Gujarat, Ranthambore, and Chittor.
Now, you might be wondering, how on earth do you fund a massive, centralized army that gets paid entirely in cash? Well, you tax. Ruthlessly. Al-Din imposed a shocking 50% agricultural tax in the fertile Doab region, and on top of that, he completely flipped the rules of war booty, or khums, taking 80% of the loot straight for the state. Imagine the state taking 80% of your battlefield earnings. It's no surprise this completely broke the wealth and power of traditional local landlords.
To make sure his cash-paid soldiers could actually survive, Alauddin basically became an extreme market dictator. Think of it as medieval price capping. He strictly controlled prices across 3 very specific markets: grain, cloth, and livestock. And if a merchant was caught cheating on weights, man, strict regulators meted out immediate, incredibly violent physical punishment. But it wasn't all just punishment. He also built to protect. He constructed the massive Siri Fort and the Hazkas Reservoir specifically to shield his population from those relentless Mongol invasions.
Section 3. Tughlaqs, genius and disastrous experiments, the era of mad genius and decline.
Genius or total madman? Honestly, this question perfectly sums up Muhammad bin Tughlaq. He was unarguably a brilliant scholar. We're talking a master of mathematics, astronomy, logic, and multiple languages. And yet, his wildly futuristic administrative experiments left historians deeply, deeply divided. From aggressively moving the entire capital population from Delhi all the way to Daulatabad, to launching these disastrous, ill-planned military campaigns in Khorasan and the Himalayas, his grand ideas often proved completely disconnected from ground reality.
But his most famous catastrophe? Oh, it was a wildly futuristic idea for the time: fiat currency. He actually issued copper tokens that held the exact value of silver. It's a brilliant concept, except he forgot one minor detail: anti-counterfeiting measures. Practically overnight, every citizen turned their house into a home mint. The economy completely collapsed into a hyperinflation nightmare, and the Sultan actually had to drain the royal treasury just to buy back mountains of fake homemade cash from his own people. Absolute disaster.
So to stabilize this completely ruined economy, his successor, Firoz Shah Tughlaq, steps up. And what does he do? He abolishes 24 confusing taxes and simplifies everything down to just 4 strictly Sharia-compliant taxes. The big takeaway here? Simplification works. By doing this, he actually managed to generate a highly organized, surveyed annual state income of an impressive 6.75 crore tanka.
Now, Firoz Shah was definitely a visionary builder. He constructed vast canal networks that brought agriculture to completely dry lands, and he founded new cities like Firozabad. But, and it's a big but, his administrative choices totally planted the seeds for the empire's doom. He made military posts and land grants hereditary and centralized thousands of slaves under a dedicated department. This fatally weakened the state's meritocracy and power, and that set the perfect stage for Timur's apocalyptic invasion in 1398, which, as you might guess, absolutely shattered the Sultanate.
Section 4. Sayyids and Lodis. The final era. The final stand.
From the ashes of that destruction, we get the Sayyid dynasty. It started humbly enough, with Khizr Khan ruling merely as a deputy to Timur's legacy. But the real shift, that came with the Afghans, the Lodi dynasty. Founder Balol Lodi was so down-to-earth, he famously sat and ate right on the floor with his commanders. This really helped to briefly revive the empire's fading loyalty, before he passed the torch to his highly capable successor, Sikandar Lodi.
Sikandar Lodi was a strict, modernizing kind of guy. He didn't just build the strategic new capital of Agra and India's very first double-dome tomb, he absolutely revolutionized the economy with the Sikandari Gauze, basically standardizing land measurement. But, as history often goes, all this renewed stability was rapidly undone by his successor, the notoriously arrogant Ibrahim Lodi. Ibrahim alienated his vital Afghan nobles, totally destroying the coalition his grandfather had built, and he ended up suffering brutal, consecutive military defeats against the mighty Rajput warrior Rana Sanga.
Section 5. The administrative engine of the Sultanate. The engine of the empire.
Now, if you thought complex bureaucracy was a modern invention, well, think again. Their central government functioned almost exactly like a modern political cabinet. You had the wazir expertly auditing the state finances, the defense minister managing incredibly complex military logistics, like literally branding horses to prevent fraud, and the chief justice upholding the law across the entire land.
But look, a central government is basically useless without local reach, right? At the ground level, they ingeniously synthesized Turkish military power with existing Indian local governance. They did this through the Iqta system. Military commanders were granted entire provinces, cascading down to districts, sub-districts, and finally down to the most vital economic unit of all, the agricultural villages run by local headmen. It was a brilliant, highly effective chain of tax collection and military readiness.
The Delhi Sultanate seriously laid the ultimate blueprint for empire in India, weaving together diverse cultures, massive armies, and highly complex economies over hundreds of years. But as Ibrahim Lodi's power crumbled from within, and as Babur's forces began their march toward the fateful First Battle of Panipat, a new, highly explosive era was about to dawn. And it leaves us with one thrilling question to ponder. What happens to the grand legacy of medieval swords when they are finally met with the devastating roar of modern gunpowder?